I'm Victoria, author, editor, and the owner of Blue Pen. One of the big decisions that indie authors have to make is whether to hire freelancers or a self-publishing company to help with things like editing, cover design, interior layout, marketing. You may even need help doing things like writing a back cover blurb or your author bio or uploading to KDP or Ingram Spark. There are pros and cons to working with freelancers and working with a company on these things. I have worked as a freelance editor directly with author clients, and of course I run Blue Pen, which is a company providing these services. So I can tell you a little bit about both options and of course why I chose to take Blue Pen in the company direction, what I feel that we are offering authors in this format that I could not as an independent freelance editor. Of course, the caveat is that every author is different, every journey is different, and there's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to self-publishing services. The biggest pro to working with freelancers is the one-on-one attention. It's nice you get to develop a relationship in a way that is challenging when you're working with a company. You get to communicate directly with your editor, designer, marketer, etc., and you get to choose the individuals who you believe are best suited to your project. So when you're looking for a freelancer, it is wide open. Welcome to the internet. There are a ton of people out there who can help you with your book. And while that is a big pro, it is also a con. You are presumably hiring freelancers because you are not an expert in all of these things, which no one expects you to be, by the way. You do not have to have a degree in editing, design, and marketing to self-publish a book. That's why you get outside help. But the challenge is that you are trying to vet these professionals and determine whether they are, number one, good at what they do, and number two, right for you in your book. And you're trying to determine that without the expert knowledge of that field. So you may look at sample line edits, for example, and think that they look good. It seems good. It's probably good. But do you really know? If you're not an editor yourself, then you're coming at this without the base knowledge to really determine whether this is the right person for you to work with. And yes, there are things you can look for to help you decide whether this is at least a qualified professional. And I will link to a blog post about doing just that. But as I said, it can be a challenge and therefore one of the cons to working with freelancers. The other con to working with freelancers is that you need to hire multiple freelancers. Depending on how much help you need and how specialized each of them is, you may need quite a few. You're likely going to need a cover designer and an interior designer. If you work with one editor who provides different types of editing, you may just need the one. So some editors will take you from developmental editing to line editing to proofreading. They may do everything. Some editors only do developmental editing or are specifically proofreaders. So in that case, you would also need multiple editors. And in addition to finding and vetting these professionals, you are also responsible for making sure that everything is completed in the right order, that you don't skip steps. You're responsible for coordinating your entire self-publishing process. And if you are a first-time author, that can be a lot. You may not know what all needs to be done, in what order it needs to be done, and messing something up early in the game can lead to a lot of headaches later on. So this is a great example of what I mean by there is no one size fits all. If you are an experienced author, if you have several self-published books under your belt, then that is not a problem for you. You know what you're doing. You are not concerned with learning as you go. You have it planned out and you just need folks to do the work. But if you're a first-time author and you're not exactly sure how this is supposed to go, then attempting to coordinate all that, and especially if you have some sort of deadline, can be a lot. You can probably already guess from that explanation what some of the pros of working with a self-publishing company are going to be. The most obvious pro is that you get everything in one place. You work with one company for editing, cover design, interior layout, whatever you need, all in one place. That's assuming, of course, that you work with someone who offers everything that you need. Some companies may not offer things like custom illustrations, custom fantasy maps, which Bluepen does, and they are really cool. But if you work with someone who offers all the services you need, then you just have to contact that one company. You don't have to worry about vetting a bunch of professionals and coordinating everything yourself. If you are working with a reputable company, then all of the professionals who are working with your manuscript should be pre-vetted, high-quality professionals who know what they're doing. Now, that is a big if. At Bluepen, again, I am an editor myself, and I have high standards for the work that we put out. All of our team members go through a vetting process, and I make sure their work is up to par. If you choose a company that does not have roots in the industry, that is run by business people who are not committed to putting out high quality work, then you may not get that. That is why it is so important to vet companies just like you do freelancers. The big benefit is that you only have to go through that process once. You vet the company, you determine that they're someone you want to work with, then you're good to go. With freelancers, you have to do that several times. And that is a negative of working with a company. There is a potential to be scammed. There are a lot of scams out there, and most of them represent themselves as a self-publishing company or even as a publisher, if they're a vanity press trying to pass as a traditional publisher. There is a lot to say on this topic, so I will not try to throw it at you all at once. I will link to resources in the description box about how to identify scams. Be sure to protect yourself when you're out there hiring somebody to work with your manuscript. Your book is so important. It's a piece of you, and really be careful who you trust with it. Before you work with anybody in the industry, check out Writer Beware. It's such a great resource. Just type in Writer Beware and the name of the company on Google and see what you get. Also, check out their resources on what a vanity press is, what constitutes a scam. I find a lot of indie authors and prospective authors don't quite understand what constitutes a scam in the industry. So be sure to familiarize yourself with that before you really start researching companies. Another potential con to working with a company is lack of one-on-one communication and individual attention. So companies operate differently. This is gonna depend on who you work with. I will say that at Bluepen, we do put a focus on individual attention. Some companies do not. Again, coming from a freelance editing background, I really tried to model our process after the author-editor relationship that you get with a freelancer, because I felt that was very important. It's good to have that continuing communication with one point of contact to really make sure that the people working with your book understand your vision for it. So what we do at Bluepen is we have team members called book bosses. When you contact us, you talk to a book boss right off the bat, talk about what you need, how we can help you reach your goals. And then after booking services, the book boss is the one who coordinates everything and, kind of leads you through the process. If you're working with a developmental editor, you do have a phone call with the editor, but most of your communication goes through that book boss for consistency's sake and so that they can make sure they're placing your work with the best team members for it. So if you're working with a company, be sure to ask them what their process is like. Will you be talking to 15 different people during the course of your contract, or will you get that one-on-one attention? One of the other big things to consider is specialization. Now, I don't know if I would really attribute this as a pro to either freelancers or companies, because it really just depends. No matter what, you want to be working with someone who is familiar with your genre and your age category. If your book is YA fantasy, then you don't want to be working with an editor who is only familiar with historical fiction. So that means if you're going with a freelancer, then you really need to research professionals and find someone who specializes in your genre and age category. Again, if you're working with a good company, then one of the benefits may be that they have a roster of editors and designers and can make sure that the person working on your manuscript is a good fit and specializes in your genre. However, if you're working with a company that is only interested in making money and doesn't really care about the quality of work it's putting out, then they may throw anybody on your manuscript. They may assign any editor to it without really caring if they have a background in the genre or subject matter. So if you are working with a company, these are really important questions to ask before you sign anything. And one final pro of working with a company is the turnaround time. Very often companies can turn things around more quickly for a few reasons. Number one, it's easier to work on things simultaneously. We often have, our cover designers working on concepts while the editing is still in progress, which you can coordinate yourself if you're working with freelancers, but it can be a little more challenging because you're working with a lot of individual schedules. It's a little easier to navigate with a company. Again, I can say that from experience because I have, as a freelance editor, tried to work with schedules for clients when they have deadlines and they're working with other freelancers. And it's just, it's challenging. It's easier when you're a team who's used to working together and used to coordinating with each other. And the other thing that makes it easier for companies is when you have a team, you may have multiple folks who would be a good fit and would be just as good working on the same manuscript. So if editor A is not available, editor B may be available to start right away. Whereas if you're looking at freelancers, you may not have that option. You may just have to wait the 5 or 6 months that they're booked out. Those are the big pros and cons to working with freelancers versus companies. As I said, I really want to drive home, no matter who you work with, do your due diligence, do your research, make sure they're reputable, and make sure they are a good fit for you and your manuscript. Remember to trust your gut. If you are ever uncertain, don't be afraid to walk away. Don't let anybody pressure you into anything that you're not comfortable with. Again, I will drop links to some additional resources in the description box. So if you're interested, check those out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, if you're interested in working with Blue Pen or learning more about us, check out bluepenbooks.com. Happy writing, and I'll see y'all next time.